Earl, let me say.
Can you all hear me?
Here.
Earl is on his way in, so it will be starting in probably in about 5 minutes.
Thank you.
All right.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes. If you want to go ahead and start.
Yes, ma'am. I'll go ahead and call the meeting of the Legislative Committee to order. It is presently 3:08 p.m. on October 17th, and I believe we have quite a number of staff members with us today, as well as committee member Ms. Gordon, and Mr. Campbell is on his way in. So I'm going to call the meeting to order and begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, please, everyone.
Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve today's agenda?
I move that we approve today's agenda, which is today's 17th of October, 2023.
Thank you, Ms. Gordon. I'll second that. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the vote on the approval of the agenda. Wisniewski, aye.
Aye.
Gordon. Okay, wonderful. So that's unanimous. And Ms. Cushingberry, do we have any public comments today?
No, ma'am. And I lost connection, so I'm getting it back up again.
Okay, no worries. Does everybody else have the next item on the agenda, which is the approval of the October 5th Legislative Committee meeting minutes? Is that in here, Robin?
Yes. Can you see the screen yet? Let's see. Can you? Can you see the
Yes.
screen?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Sharing. And I'm pulling it back up.
Awesome. Can I get a motion to approve the October 5th Legislative Committee meeting minutes?
I move that we approve the October 5th, 2023 committee meeting minutes.
Okay, and I'll second. Call for the vote on that.
Aye.
Wisniewski, aye. So that's also unanimous, Robin.
Got it.
Would you guys like me to proceed, or do you want to pause and wait for Mr. Campbell?
Let me see how far away, how close he is.
Okay. I'll just do a brief recap on the next item. So the next item on the agenda is discussion of the McCormick County School Board legislative proposal to the SCSBA Delegate Assembly. There is a letter from Dr. Guads from McCormick included in here. I believe that was from their chair of their Board of Trustees. And they are looking for support for a change in the way that school districts, or their school district in particular, pays sales tax. I believe there's some time constraints under that, and I'm not sure if anybody has anything additional to add. But I did ask at the last meeting if we could get an estimate of that impact to Beaufort County as well. So if this change was made statewide, what kind of impact would that have on us?
Campbell said, go ahead and proceed with the McCormick discussion since we have Lynn on. He is still about 10 minutes away.
Okie dokie, sounds good. And we do have Lynn on with us,
Yes.
and I will
And Tanya.
and Tanya. So I guess I would ask Tanya first and foremost if she could touch on the estimated sales and use tax that, we have paid and what that would look like for the school district if we did pursue having this change adopted for our district as well.
Ma'am. So can you all hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So we took a look at the sales tax in our financial software. We were able to run it a couple of different ways and came up with basically the same amount. So basically, we took a query of our supplies that we purchased, so everything in the supply category for the school district, and came up with about $25 million. And the current sales tax is 7% in our county. And so 7% of those $25.9 million would be $1.8 million in sales tax. And there's also use tax in there as well. So if we don't pay sales tax on the initial purchase, then we have to pay it. And if it's applicable and not exempt, then we would owe it in a form of a use tax return each month. So the second thing we looked at was, we know that there are sales tax, so those were easy to capture, but the sales tax often comes in on service contracts. Various software systems are applicable to as well. So we had to really take an estimate of this one. So about $4.5 million of contract services at 7% is another $300,000. So we're thinking what we are paying is estimated to be about $2.1 million. And McCormick related theirs to their value of the mill in operations. And so when looking at ours, our value of the mill is 1.6 million. So I just did 2.1 divided by 1.6 mils, and that's a value or cost of sales tax paid in mills of 1.3. So 1.3 mils would equate to what we're estimating to be the amount of sales tax we're paying. These are rough estimates, but I think that gives us a pretty good idea of what we're showing. And McCormick, actually, I wasn't real sure where McCormick was, but it's a little bitty town with about a 2,200 population, and their value of the mill is $26,000. So there, but it had an effect of 2 to 4 mills on them. So I felt our value of the mill is much larger. We're a bigger county, so it had a little bit less impact on us, but we think that 1.3 is a good estimate.
Thank you very much, Ms. Crosby, for doing that. I appreciate you giving us our numbers in comparison to theirs too, because that puts some things into perspective. I believe Lynn is on as well. So if nobody has any questions for Ms. Crosby, I'd like to get her feedback on what she thinks. Just in relation to McCormick's request, and then additionally into whether or not Beaufort County was to move forward and ask for essentially the same, how she feels that might be received.
Well, sure. And certainly I understand McCormick County, it's a small county. There's a lot of conversation going on about consolidation of McCormick County into another school district because of some of their costs. I think the best way to look at this is that if there's going to be a legislative proposal to eliminate the tax, it would probably have to be in the form for all school districts. And I think when you do that, the amount of money of that fiscal impact to the state would be significant. So I think kind of just based on where the House and Senate are right now, with our revenue estimates significantly lower than what they have been for the past 2 years. I mean, we're talking, we've had $1 billion surpluses the last couple of years. This year, we're looking at potentially only 400 million. That's an early estimate. So where you choose to go with this, clearly it's y'all's decision. But I think if it's going to be meaningful, it would probably have to be statewide. And then I fear it will be cost prohibitive under this potential appropriations bill for 24-25.
Thank you for that. That's what I was concerned about, was once you do open it up to the entire state, that it becomes less palatable. I can't see if there's any hands up. Sorry.
Dr. Watts' hand, Dr. Watts'
There we
hand is
go.
up.
Dr. Glatz?
Yeah, hi, everyone, and thank you, Lynn, for your comments. When I was talking with Debbie Elmore about this, email from McCormick last month, one of the things she reminded me about is that the SCSBA supports is advocating legislation, and I'm going to go into their handbook for this year, the Delegate Assembly Handbook, and number 30, which is on page 40, specifically says tax reform relief. So SCSBA believes the state should conduct an immediate review of the property tax relief plan enacted in 2006. Obviously, that's the Act 388, to determine necessary changes that support high quality public schools and preserve local districts' ability to meet their operational and school facility needs. Changes should include but not be limited to, and it goes on. It's about a page or so. So I having thought about this and I agree with what Lynn just said. I don't think it's feasible for the whole state to join on to their request. And I think instead what really needs to be done, and you've talked about this, I know, Rachel, and even requested it as a agenda topic, and it's as part of the like I said, the SCSBA legislative proposals for 2023 is tax reform relief, and I think it needs to be done on a much larger scale. I think the chances of that, though, unfortunately, are not great. But I just don't think this particular request from McCormick is something that's going to work well for the state as a whole. Thank you.
Mr. Dallas' hand is up.
Mr. Dallas?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, a little late. I had a MD's appointment. I agree. I do not support. I don't think it's wise for us to support singularly McCormick's request. I think it is something that applies to all 72 districts in the state. I do believe that we should pursue some redress of the tax load on public schools. When I look at a lot of the legislation that's coming through, a lot of what I hear my friends talk about is the revenue moving wherever the kid goes. But unfortunately, a lot of the expenses associated and the liberties that those kids can still retrieve from the public schools, the expense stays with the public schools. So I think even if it's low chance of success, this first initial effort, I think there's some benefit to actually moving forward and having the legislature, go on record that they're not willing to do this now for financial reasons. I understand that. But I think long-term legislatively, we have to address how a lot of the expenses are domiciled in the public schools, even for as more and more kids migrate away from us, the expense stays. So strategically, I think that's something that has to be addressed. For public schools are going to be asphyxiated under, what I call unfair expense load. Thank you.
Rachel, to let you know, Mr. Campbell is here now.
Thank you. Mr. Campbell, would you like to take over?
Yeah, okay, all right. My thing is that about this. I feel that sometime in the near future, we're going to have to address this for the whole state. Because we don't have automatic early childhood in the state of South Carolina. Mm-hmm. And we will never close the achievement gap until we get there. No matter how many courses we put in the school or how many programs we put in these schools throughout the state of South Carolina, it's not going to change. So that's just my take. Thank you.
Mr. Smith's hands up.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. I do agree. However, I think that we should take it up, but not under McCormick. I think as a state, I think that would better fit, would better suit everyone. Myself in terms of these taxes. And I'm not sure if Mrs. Crosby has spoke about it, and if I missed it, but I would definitely like to possibly hear her take on it as well. She did. Okay.
Dr. Watson's hands up.
Thank you. I think another thing, I think it's highly unlikely that the floor will pass a majority vote at the assembly of it has to be 2/3 to even bring McCormick's proposal to the floor, because they did not meet the deadline for the CSBA legislative proposals. And last year at the assembly, Beaufort County brought forward a proposal to the floor about leveling the playing field with charter schools in our state and allowing us under, I guess, unusual circumstances to have 25% of our teachers non-certified, like charter schools can have in the state. Well, that the assembly did not vote in the majority for us to even bring it to the floor. So I think this would be unlikely. And I do not support it. I'm not part of the legislative committee, but I don't support it for the reasons I've stated.
Go on.
Thank you. After listening to my colleagues and reading this proposal, I too am not inclined at this time to support McCormick. And a lot of the reasons are they've been a small town forever, small school town, and sometimes I think the legislative and others should look at how they appropriate, the monies and taxes on these small towns. It's not fair at this late date to bring this up. It should have been brought up, earlier, so that we could really have a good discussion. I'm just not feeling, while I'm sympathetic to what they are going through, I cannot support them fully at this time. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm just going to echo what Dr. Gwads and Ms. Gordon said. I'm not inclined to support this as a one district solution. I do agree with the overall sentiment that since we receive revenue through taxation, it doesn't make sense necessarily for us to pay taxes with that revenue again for those specific items. I know we do get some exemptions to that. So perhaps maybe the call should actually be that we are asking the legislature to look to expanding those exemptions. So it's not necessarily that we're saying, hey, give the entire state full exemption, but maybe expand that. So it's not so much of a fiscal impact to the state. At this time, though, the McCormick issue is pretty much a dead issue for me. I think that the legislative committee could perhaps take up the matter itself in the future for one of our priorities, and include also SCSBA's call to reform on Act 388 with that. But those are just my thoughts and concerns on the matter.
Okay. 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 All right.
Do I need to have this, the committee is unanimous in not supporting that. But Dr. Watts, does this still need to go on the agenda, the first agenda in November for the full board to say, per recommendation by the committee not to support it, or do we need to have it on there at all?
Good question. Usually in the past, we only brought it forward if it had a majority yes vote from the committee, and it has a majority, it has a unanimous no vote. So maybe Earl could just cover it briefly in his report and not have a
Action.
action. How does that sound, Earl? Okay.
Okay, the next item is discussion of proviso 1.93. Partisanship, curriculum, and availability of academic course.
So that is,
Who brought that up?
well, this was the African American studies, so it falls kind of up under there, but that's
Oh, okay.
the total all in. Ms. Phelps was online to
That is
discuss
something
that.
Ms. Lord mentioned, right?
Yeah. You and Ms. Courtney had both wanted that about African American studies and if it was being allowed or not allowed. But this proviso was part of it. Am I saying that correct, Lynn?
Yeah, and let me just correct one thing. So originally the proviso was 1.93 and it was deleted. So when I first looked at it, I'm like, gosh, well, there's no need, it's not there, but actually it is in the budget as 1.82, the exact same language. And what I've been able to discern from my conversations with folks is that this was really an effort to have this language in because the integrity and transparency legislation has not passed yet. That legislation is pending conference committee. I think everybody anticipated that the conference committee would meet and there would be action on that piece of legislation, which deals more thoroughly with this issue. But because they did not take it up, this proviso was left in the budget. I understand that most everybody is okay in the education community. There is a cause of action issue with the trial lawyers on being able to sue any teacher or district or principal. And there is some consternation around that. But this is being largely pushed by the Freedom Caucus to use as an issue in 2024 election campaigns. So I don't think we're done with this yet. I think it's going to all depend on what happens in that transparency and integrity bill. And y'all have that, or you had that maybe the last time we were all together. If anybody wants to just take a look at that and we can come back and revisit it. But at any rate, that is what I know about all of that.
Well, my concern is, although this is 1.93, not everyone is up to speed on what that means, because there are questions about whether or not African American studies will be in our schools. I know that a couple of our high schools had the curriculum. I don't know if they're teaching it now. I know Well Grant Early College had the African American studies. So my question is, if we continue forward with teaching African American studies in our schools before this is okayed or permitted, are we going to be in trouble, or do we take it out of our curriculum and not give the students who want to take this course the opportunity to? Because I read the language here. I mean, if you read it, it's it's kind of hardcore, you know. So are we teaching African American studies? I'm talking about Beaufort County. If not, have our schools and principals been, you know, addressed with this, that to take it out of their curriculum?
Dr. Stratos, in preparing for this, says that what we're not teaching is the AP African American Studies. So that was never part of the curriculum. But I think there are still some courses that are
Well, AP just means, you know, the higher
right.
echelon of students.
That part wasn't being taught, but
Which
we're
is
still
not,
teaching.
which is not fair, because, you know, all students should have the opportunity, if they want to take African American studies. Now, if it's gonna be taken out on the state level, then we need to articulate that, you know, to our schools, to our curriculum people, so that they do not put it in the course catalog, which will be coming up pretty soon. So it's just not about this language, it's about, are we going to do it or not? We need to have that conversation and take it out of the course catalog, period.
Mr. Dallas,
Yes. I'm sitting in my car outside the doctor's office, so I don't have the materials in front of me. But did I hear Ms. Lynn say that the educational system is with this removal?
There is a group of the education community that would like to see this proviso deleted and have adopted the Transparency and Integrity in Education Act, which is what's pending, House Bill 3728. And there's still some concerns overall in that piece of legislation, as I mentioned, because of the cause of action that anybody can bring a lawsuit for basically any reason. That causes a great deal of consternation. So my suggestion is,
Can I? I'm sorry, ma'am. Can I just ask one clarifying question though?
of course,
Okay, so if this discussion was about not teaching the Holocaust, would we be so sanguine about it being removed? I think we have to fight this.
I agree.
I think it has not been adjudicated at any court level yet. And it basically flies in the face of every bit of equity action, fairness doctrine that has been a part of our country since the Constitution. So because it's politically expedient, I'm not in favor of saying, let's take it out, right? I think this is such a breach of fairness that I think we have to, my personal opinion is we have to push back against this, because I don't think it will stop there. And that's my concern.
Good.
And I definitely do agree with that. And my question is to Mrs. Murray. When is there going to be a meeting on this at the State House? Do you know when the next time they will convene on this matter?
well, as a matter of fact, I mean, because the conference committee has been appointed and announced, they could decide to meet anytime. My understanding from the chair of the Senate Education Committee is that they probably won't reconvene until late December, earliest beginning of January, when we come back into session on January the 9th to take up the House Bill 3728. And of course, this proviso, not 1.93, but 1.82, not that really matters because the language is exactly the same. I mean, it is in the appropriations bill and it is in effect until June 30th, 2024.
Because and I definitely like to know, because that's one right I'm willing to make. I want to be there when they are discussing this, because I think that we need to pack the house out, because this is it's a low blow, And I think that it even affects us here at Beaufort County School District because if all my colleagues remember, we do have our academic, excuse me, my mind is going, my brain is moving faster than my lips right now. But we do have our academic department do have a task of adding African American studies and adding African American culture to the part of the Beaufort County student. So I'm sure to some degree this right here does affect that. And it's just mind-boggling to even hear that we have legislators at the State House that are okay with this. So I think that if we approve those books week in and week out, then that means that our board definitely will be in support of this not happening. You can't wash the baby out with bathwater. Thank you.
Rachel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure if everybody's reading the same 1.93 that I am, but I don't necessarily read 1.93 to mean that we're throwing out African American history or studies or culture or anything like that. The way I personally read it is that this is speaking to particular concepts in regard to inherent racism, sexism, whether consciously or unconsciously. That's how I read it. And at the end, it does state that nothing in it is to be construed as prohibiting any professional development training for teachers related to unconscious bias. So I know that this is obviously a hot topic issue. And obviously it's contentious at the State House because this was put in, my understanding, as a placeholder so that the Transparency in Education Act could get fleshed out. I just want us to make sure that we're all reading it the same way, because I don't see it as reading that we're throwing out African American studies because of 1.93. I think it has to do with a particular viewpoint being taught in that type of curriculum. So I do think also that our academic committee needs to probably take this up and also perhaps even get a clarification from the South Carolina Department of Education about how this impacts those courses in particular. I don't think that's necessarily the job of the legislative committee, but I know Ms. Gordon will certainly take that to task. So thank y'all.
Dallas?
Gonna say, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just gonna say my other comment was it probably need to run it by your legal counsel just to make sure that she has a good handle on what your academic committee, as you talk about this brochure and that process. But I am certain that the academic committee will do all that, and guidance from the department makes a lot of sense as well.
Okay.
Well, she is here.
Yeah, I am here. Lynn, I've been speaking with Representative Erickson actually about that Transparency and Integrity Act, and she told me about the conference committee being established and sent me the Senate and the House version. So I've been following up with her about that. But I can also check with the academic, with Dr. Stratus about the courses that are being taught to.
Yeah, I think that's probably better safe than sorry on that. And again, as soon as we get notification of any meeting, we'll let y'all know, because I know, as Mr. Smith indicated, he'd like to be there. But just in terms of context, this was a placeholder. I think Rachel said it best, that it was a placeholder until they can get 3728 sorted. And again, there's still a lot of controversy around that whole piece of legislation. So the versions are different, very different.
Yes, if you can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, So the ambiguity included in that particular piece of legislation, in my humble opinion, having seen similar things done elsewhere outside of the US, it is intentional. So it speaks, well, we're not trying to disable the teaching, but it's the thought process that's conveyed as a part of the teaching, which means every individual who would venture to try to teach that course is going to put themselves at risk. That is the strategic intention. So when it was first said that the educational system in South Carolina is okay with this, that was a shock to me. And I don't think this is one of those topics that we can be sort of retiring and just let it develop, because I think it's going to be adjudicated at a national level. I think SCOTUS is going to get involved, because this is so antithetical to so many of the basic premises of our country. And I think we would be better served if we actually sort of just try to make sure we're stating we want fairness. That's it. And if some of you are wondering why I'm so passionate about this particular topic, last Thursday I spoke at Congregation Beth Yam as a result of the Hamas and Israeli. And this type of acceptance starts small and people become more emboldened. And then you get something that is absolutely terrible in terms of individuals being attacked while they're sleeping or what have you from someone who is coming across a border. Now, that's an exaggeration of what we're facing. But again, these things start small. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Ms. Gordon?
Thank you. To my colleagues and those sitting here, as an African-American woman, I do not like the language. I do not like the thought processes, because the average person will not be able to interpret this, because we're hearing all across this nation that African-American studies are being taken out of our schools. Our students deserve to know the past, the present, and the future. And that is taking it away from a people, from the African-American people. This is history. We may not like it, but slavery was here. We may not like it, Holocaust happened. There are things in history, guys. We weren't there, but it happened. And what better way for our children to know than in the books and to be taught? So when I read this, I see the hidden message that they don't want it in our schools. I don't know anyone who's okay with history not being taught to African-American children about what we went through. So every day, people, it's a struggle. You may not want, it may be uncomfortable for you. I don't care. Slavery was uncomfortable for us. How do you think we feel when we read the things that happened to our people who wanted to read? Eyes, taken out of their heads, fingers and hands cut off because they wanted to, write. That's history. That is history. And shame on this legislation for writing this so ambiguous that they hide the truth. And the truth is, they do not want African-American studies taught in the school because it makes some people uncomfortable. Get over it. We're all uncomfortable, but we have to face the past to better the future. That's all I got to say.
Mr. Smith?
And I just wanted to respond to Dr. Lesky, when it states the individual shall feel discomfort or guilty or anguish. I was in the store when we first started this whole book situation, and a parent came to me and told me that she said particularly she didn't think that her Caucasian kid should engage in discussion in class over at Beaufort High School in terms of what took place in slavery because of the fact that her child came home and felt guilty about it. And they had a conversation that she was uncomfortable and she felt that her child felt a weakness for African American people. So this, when I read it and I think about what the conversation that I've had in the past from parents and what's going on right now in this district, not only in this country, then this speaks right to that. So that's what that's the one of the driving forces for me to be actively engaged into this, and so that we keeping our eyes on this, because if we ignore it now, then we want to have the footing to respond later once it's done. So we need to be actively engaged in this, and I'll just leave it there. Thank you.
Yeah, well, for me, I have been talking about this for years. And I don't think that folks don't want to, they think history is something you feel good about. Well, some of it you can, but some of it you cannot. You take Germany. Every school in Germany, their students is taught about the Holocaust. They make field trips to the concentration camp, every student. And when you don't know history, that's the reason why we have so many problems in this country today. But the things that have happened to people, you know, it is sad. We talk, but we celebrate, or they celebrate, I don't, Columbus Day. Columbus never set foot on what we know as the United States of America. He landed in Barbados. And he and his brother was tried and convicted because of the treatment that they did in Barbados. But nobody, you don't have anyone to talk about that. And none of this is going to change until we rewrite history books, period. And that's all I have to say. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Next.
Then you're muted. Oh, I did.
Sorry, I don't want to add any fuel to the fire, but I just want y'all to also be aware that there is another conversation that is coming, and it is going to be a very hot topic on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So that legislation is sitting out there. That is going to be hotly debated. And of course, in that particular piece of legislation, you deal a lot with Title IX funding and what you have to do in order to pull federal grants down, and how that contradicts with whatever the state law may or may not be. So I just wanted to just say that to make y'all aware that that debate is also coming, and I know y'all are going to be interested in what happens with that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Burnett. Please would you let us know when that happens too?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Has a bill been introduced yet, Lynn?
Yes.
What's the bill number?
I don't have it in front of me, Wendy, but I will send it to you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Oh, Dallas? Damn. Okay. Okay, our next.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, sorry about that, folks. I think God and everybody knows I'm a technophobe, and so I don't handle technology very well. But what Lynn was saying is absolutely correct about DEI. It is also it will be followed by ESG as well. So there's a repulsion of things that sort of talk about, certain topics. And I go back to, I think it's important that as a school district and as a society, we establish those things that relate to fairness and pursue them. Because I think ultimately that will win out. So just a sort of a point of view there. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our next discussion is proposed legislative agenda. You should have a copy of it. This was done when?
So this was the legislative agenda that you came up with 2023, but because it was so late when it was done, the question is, how much of this do you still want to keep on it? What do you want to change? What do you want to add? So this is what you had. And Lynn was going to go through with suggestions as well.
Okay, all right, Lynn.
Okay, thanks. So the first one you all had is Senate Bill 11. That bill deals with public schools being closed on Veterans Day. That bill is still pending in the Senate Education Committee. So anything that's on this list, we'll be in the second year of a 2-year session. So everything is carried over. The next one was Senate Bill 244. That deals with school board trustees being held at the same time as general election. That bill is also pending on the Senate contested calendar. So it hasn't gone over to the House yet, but it is still alive and pending on the Senate contested calendar. 3318 is about conducting audits if the General Assembly has 5 members or 2 of the Board of Trustees for which the district audit is being sought. It can only be done every 3 years, and that legislation is pending in the House Education Committee. It hasn't been taken up. 3485 deals with the Families' Rights and Responsibilities Act. So that says that parents have the ultimate responsibility for upbringing in their children's education, healthcare, and mental health. Some of 3485, depending on which version you look at, is included in the integrity legislation, transparency and integrity legislation. So this bill is sitting in the House Judiciary Committee and probably will stay there unless something falls apart on the transparency legislation. 3317 is a long-standing issue for you all, that schools can be open before the 3rd Monday in August. That bill's still pending in the House Education Committee, and y'all did vote to support that. Senate Bill 206 is the eligibility of pay raises for first 28 teachers, 28 years of teaching. I will say about this, most of this legislation, which you all supported, the governor and the General Assembly have tried to address in the budget in terms of teacher increase in salary, starting salary, and then the following step increases. So, you know, you might, I think you all supported that. There's no reason to change how you feel about it unless there's something I don't know. But I think that you're probably going to see more of that located in the appropriations bill versus in separate legislation, because it's so tied to recurring revenue. But the governor has said unequivocally that he wants to get in a better place by 2026.
So should that stay on the agenda, or since it's already done, or is that ones that should be removed off?
No, I think
leave it on there. Okay.
I'd leave it.
Okay.
3314 is the SRO officers. The House and Senate, the appropriations bill appropriated funding for all SRO officers, for all schools to have student resource officers. So that has been accomplished.
So that one should come, should be removed.
Should be removed. 735. This is the opioid antidotes used in case of an emergency. So that legislation is still being discussed. It's in the House Education Committee. I anticipate that legislation is going to pass next year. So I don't see any reason for you all to change your position on supporting and just leave it on your agenda. And then Senate Bill 278, this is the huge juvenile justice reform legislation. There's a study committee that's going on over the course of the summer and the fall. It's been going on. They're still talking about that. Senator Gerald Malloy's been sort of leading that charge. So I anticipate that they will have a recommendation when we come back in January with some significant amendments to that legislation. So I think y'all wanted for us to monitor that, just to make sure that we capture what's happening and what potentially could be required. But I don't think you all voted to support or not to support it. You just wanted us to keep you apprised of what's going on.
Rachel's hands up.
Okay. Rachel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Lynn, I might have missed it. SB 202. What was your take on that one?
Oh, I did skip. I'm so sorry. Hold on. That's the Teachers' Bill of Rights. And that is pending in the Senate Education Committee. And y'all's recommendation was to support it. So I don't see any reason again that you would change that.
Great. And Mr. Chair, if I may, with a follow-up.
All right.
I know at our last meeting, there was discussions about future topics on our potential support of universal PK or PK expansion, making kindergarten mandatory, that kind of thing, as well as CTE legislation. So my suggestion would be, along with kind of what Lynn just recapped about what we should take off and, keeping our support of these items, I think it would be beneficial if we could have Ms. Stokes-Murray look at any legislation that touches on those two items for possible inclusion for 2024 session.
Okay.
Also, I remember us mentioning something too about the about healthcare, and that we were supporting that. I know county council has healthcare for both for their board members. I remember us mentioning something about that as well. Yeah. Even we did it here, or even we did it at the big meeting. Mrs. Murray, has there been something about that?
On
On
behavioral
insurance?
behavioral health services, Mr. Smith?
Actually, excuse me, basically health insurance. I remember even we took it up either at the conference for the school board members, or either we went up here, but at one of them, I remember we took a vote on it, and I believe that at one point in time, I thought our board discussed that as well, because I remember me bringing up and saying that county council, that's when I went in and I realized that county council got health, they get health insurance versus us. I guess I don't think that this board that we get it. And so I was wondering, was there talking about that on the state level?
I'm happy to go back and look. I know we dealt with paid family leave this year.
Right.
But I don't know specifically. Dr. G, do you remember something that maybe was discussed at the School Board Association meeting that I may not be aware of?
Yes.
Okay.
So can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so the delegate assembly handbook for the SCSBA assembly that's going to take place in December has that on page 32. And yes, it was discussed certainly last year there. And the CSBA believes the General Assembly should enact a legislation to allow local school districts to opt into the State Public Employee Benefits Authority, PEBA, health insurance coverage for school board members, ensuring equal benefits across the board for all local government leaders in South Carolina. That's what they support. And this is my comments afterwards, is the school boards are the only elected officials of the government in South Carolina that do not have that opportunity.
So with that being said, I think that should be something that I mean that we should follow or we should add to the list.
Agenda.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Who's saying this done with this one? We got to plan the same stuff.
Yeah, I just wanted to, so Lynn, did you finish your comments here?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so can we go scroll back up, and I just have some comments and questions about some of these. Can you go back to the top, please, Robin? Thank you. All right, Veterans Day, yes, as having it off. Okay, so SB 244, I believe Beaufort County is already doing that, because those of us that begin our term in an even numbered year, we that's Earl, me, and Ingrid and Angela, we were on the general election ballot. So I think that's already, we're doing that here.
We are, it's 4 and 7.
Yeah.
So 4 of you all are on, it's 7 1 year for the in 2 years. So you are on even years each time, but it's not all, it's 4 and 7.
Oh, when I was thinking even numbered years, meaning those of us that begin in a 0, 2, 4. Well, I guess that's true. I don't know. So, but this is saying, I think we already do this. It's kind of confusing what's written here. Do you know more about it, Lynn?
I thought they were sitting on 7 people, all
No.
I thought they were trying to say if they were trying to get the whole board at the same time. And what we do is 7 and 4.
Right.
Yeah, well, I definitely think that would not, so you're saying you have everybody elected at once?
Yes.
That's,
Yeah,
I think,
That's
Is that what-
I can see the
Yeah.
biggest disadvantage of that, of course, is that you don't have carryover from past boards very much. I don't know. Anyways, we'll just keep going. So keep scrolling.
so
please.
that should be not support. So under board recommendation, we need to have on there that the board does not support that because we do 7 and 4. So that should say not support.
Yeah, or not currently.
The board had, this wasn't updated, but I think at one of the meetings at last year when you all discussed it, you all did not support that because we didn't, for what you said.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
For the reason you said.
Yeah. So keep scrolling. Can you go so I can read the rest? It's pretty small. Oh yeah, I definitely think this HB 3318 is not good for a number of reasons. We're an 11-member board. Each member has the same power and authority. Or I really should say that we only have power and authority in a vote of a majority, a quorum. And this is giving power to 2 people on the board, which I think is not a good idea. Plus, it's saying that the audit that they vote for could only be performed every 3 years. So that's limiting potentially future members on the board, their power and authority for the board as a whole. So I don't like this at all for those reasons. I think it's not wise. Let's keep going. Yeah, I certainly agree that we need, as Earl says all the time, parental involvement for academic achievement. Next one, HB 17. Yeah, I think we've talked about this a lot. We support that. The next one. Yeah, oops. I think we already supported that as
Yeah.
Lynn pointed out. SB 202. So that's pending really. So
But the board still
that's
supports.
supported, right? And then the next one. Oh, so so Lynn, can you explain this to me? So when I read this, I was thinking that let's say a school with 1,500 students would need 3 of these SROs. That's not correct. It's just schools that'll have 500 students or more.
I can go and pull the proviso for
Okay.
you, and see how they laid it out. But
Okay. Yeah,
my
you don't have to do that right now, but
understanding
yeah, I just interpreted it slightly differently. I do think it's good to have SROs in our schools. Next one. The opioids, yes, I think it's smart to have the antidote. There's really, as far as I know, as a physician, there's really no harm in giving it, even giving it inappropriately, which is a good thing. Next one, SB 278. Oh yeah, so is this trying to make it harder for schools to expel, suspend, or transfer a student? That's what it seems like to me. However, the last part of the bill limits the reasons to, and those are listed there. If there is a victim at the school that fears the student, that seems very, in a way, subjective and perhaps less constraining. Do you know, Lynn, what's behind this?
there's been a lot of conversation about this. And again, this has been Senator Malloy and Senator Shealy who've pushed for this, largely because Senator Shealy's chair of Family and Veteran Services Committee, and Malloy's always involved in anything on the judicial front. As I understand it, they were trying to be able to keep kids in school with parameters around that. And there's been a lot of conversation about how that should look and how it should work, which is why they're doing this study committee on it over the fall. So I don't know how this is actually going to flush out. I mean, the bill is 38 pages long. It changes a lot of statutes. So I think we will see some revised version of this when we come back in January. And I think y'all should keep it on your watch list and then come back when we get a sense of what the amendment's going to look like, how all encompassing it's going to be.
Thank you for that. And so can you scroll, or is that the end of it, Robin?
That's it.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm finished. Thank you.
Rachel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to touch on the one that had to do with the audits. There was also, so there's some of these that don't have what I believe the committee had kind of come to agreement on. So we do need to insert the recommendations, but on the one that had to do with the audits, there was also that, we have an 11-member school board and other school boards have maybe 5 members. So for some, the numbers might make sense, but for us, it certainly doesn't. So I think that's important that we point that out in case they do make changes to this legislation to make it pass or to get it to pass, that we point out not only that's not a majority for us, and that if they did want to enact something, it should be, it should work for all school districts based on their board composition.
So what I'm hearing you say is that you would want an amendment if that bill were to pass that would require that it be a majority of the school board members. And that way you would address it for no matter what the size of.
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure I had that right in my brain.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Mr. Dallas?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Couple of points. One, in all of these positions, like take Bill 278, it might be worthwhile to add another layer of analysis as to how this particular bill, if implemented for charter and private schools, would affect them vis-a-vis public schools. because I think a lot of people are not aware of the delta between the two types of school. And again, my concern just from a financial analysis perspective is as public schools are saddled with more and more financial responsibilities, even as the kids are moved to elsewhere, it sort of becomes a ship overloaded with too much cargo and a hole in the hull. It will take a while, but it will make public schools not a very good place to be. And that Bill 278, if they are trying to keep kids who are, not really socialized to be in partnership with others, and public schools have to keep them. I know there have been some instances elsewhere where a kid who gets expelled from two other types of schools come to public schools, and then that kid is very, very much destroying the tranquility in the learning environment. The other thing, and I just pose this, I don't know, keep in mind I'm only 10 months in. Dr. Wisniewski showed me two meetings ago where I learned from her conversation that every 5 years there has to be a strategic review. I would encourage that that strategic review, I think is due in 2025, really starts to look at the disintegration of the American family. Because as Mr. Campbell said, when kids are coming into us, if they enter on the first grade, we're playing catch up. And it's hard to overcome that family structure if it's not supportive and nurturing and focused on kids actually learning and talking and playing, those types of things. So hopefully that can be a topic at a work session where we look at birth to 5. A lot of the research that people are saying, read this, read that, and review this study. I did not know this before. And it's just mind-boggling to me. Our efforts may be too little too late if we don't start earlier. And I know there's some efforts underway in Beaufort County among the charitable organizations and nonprofit organizations to actually work better in terms of getting kids to where they get some real positive learning experiences early on. So just wanted to share that as hopeful consideration by those on the committee. Thank you.
Well,
Yeah, I agree, Carlton, with your comments regarding this SB 278 and this your second comments about the I guess you'd say disintegration of the functional family unit and how that it's affecting our children coming into our schools and whenever they come in, whether it's kindergarten or first grade. And Rachel, I concur too that I do think the audit should be a vote, just like all the rest of our businesses a vote, and therefore a majority vote, as you point out. And we did, I remember us having that discussion previously. And why should an audit be any different? And I know there's in the state, I don't know all the ins and outs of how it comes about, but perhaps Lynn knows this a little bit. Certainly the state can take over the school board. So if there's something where they're concerned about the finances being mismanaged or whatever, it seems like they already have that ability to do that, as opposed to bring it down to the board level and give 2 people on an 11-member board unusual power and authority. That's it.
Gordon.
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Okay. Next item is discussion on development agreement.
Rachel's hands up.
Oh, Rachel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make sure that for the next meeting, I don't know if Miss Lynn has to jump off or anything, but I did want to make sure that we covered if there is any pending legislation, like I mentioned on PK, universal PK, CTE, vocational, whatever, that if there's any pending legislation that we take a peek at it for possible inclusion. Just want to make sure we're all on the same page. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I will, I'll go back and pull that information and I'll share it with Robin and then we can talk about it next go round.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, y'all need me for anything else?
No, we don't.
Okay, y'all take
Thank you, Lynn.
care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Development agreement and intergovernmental relationship. That's something that Rachel is. Rachel?
And then Carol and Robert had provided information for that.
Yeah.
So that's what I have in here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so this was brought up kind of as a result of what occurred out at Cherry Point with the potential rezoning of that land and how it was going to impact Okeechobee Elementary, as well as just as we see the Bluffton area, it continuing to expand and the potential overflow of that into other areas of our county. I wanted to begin the conversation, and I'm smart enough to know when to say I don't know something. So I wanted to bring in our experts and see if we could talk to them about how do we enter into conversations with either county council or other governmental agencies where it has to do with either, like we have information here on the green space program, or other possible development agreements that they're approving so that we have a seat at the table. It's my understanding that the May River site had a component where a piece of that land was donated to us. So I just want to open that conversation up and see where we can potentially get in a way that it doesn't, so that we can have a voice and also potentially have a way to find sites for future schools. Thank you.
I'm going to start with the green space thing because I thought that's where your conversation was headed. So what you said, Dr. Wisniewski, is a little bit bigger and broader than what I had anticipated. So we did look at, and I did talk this morning with Mark Davis, who's the Deputy Director of Planning and Zoning for Beaufort County. And I talked to him about the green space program. So you have two ordinances here. The first one is the one that initiated their sales tax referendum. You know, we added a penny sales tax to be able to fund the green space initiative. And again, sort of it describes here what the purpose is. And he highlighted, you know, it's really to preserve open space, protect rural and critical lands, natural resources, and to provide lands for recreation. So I think what Robert, our understanding was that you all were trying to explore whether we could use some of this as funding for new schools, as, you know, to purchase land, to bring it out of development. And then that second ordinance there is sort of the follow-up ordinance that outlines how they're going to implement that program. But what Mark sort of conveyed to me in terms of this first ordinance is the one that was what was voted on by the taxpayers, and nowhere in it does it allow for the land to be used for schools. It's just not laid out that way. So they wouldn't be able to do that. It's kind of like us, you know, in our bond referendums, if we say we're going to spend the money to build this school and do these repairs and, you know, then that's exactly what we have to spend the money on. And so I can, you know, he pretty much outlined that using the green space program to purchase land for schools is really not an option. So it is intended, though, for landowners to be able to sell their development rights. And I think that's kind of outlined in there. So that's sort of, yeah, I don't know how we can get involved with that.
So let me ask then, has there been any discussion of any of our land that is currently listed through the district? Is there any discussion of our land being or qualifying for a green space purchase?
think we would have to go through the application process. I mean, it's something we can look into. We have not done that yet. There may be certainly some potential for some of, especially those very small parcels, you know, the 1 acre, 3 acre kind of things we have out there for sale. Might be a way to, you know, ensure that they are not developed. If that is the wish of the board. So
Okay.
we can have further discussions on those if you like.
Well, I know that a few of them have been up for quite a while, and this, I mean, it's as if there's, I don't know if there's an application fee or whatnot, but if it's just a matter of us filling out an application, I don't see why we wouldn't try to potentially, you know, go that avenue. I would want to have the feedback of the full board or whatnot, and I'm not sure if we need a motion coming out of committee for that, but that's
You're into that application process. It is online. If you just Google Beaufort County Green Space, it will bring you to the site that has these two ordinances. And I believe it also had a link to those application processes, but quite honestly, I didn't go that far down the road, but we can do that. The second point you sort of touched on was about our involvement with development agreements when they come forth. When we have been asked to sort of give an opinion or say we can support a development or not, we have written letters in the past. We did write for letters about our concerns with the Okatee property that was up for a rezone. Because of our concerns with capacity issues. Does that mean we won't, support students living there? Absolutely, we will support every student that comes to our schools from those. But we did have those concerns, and we have written letters both to the county and to the town of Bluffton.
So Carol, tell me if you know of the May River site and that land and how that was all agreed upon. I don't know when that was done.
We purchased that land in 2008. And as far as I know, there was no gift from any developer for that particular piece of land.
There was something in the development agreement, though, that there was a particular, because I've read it before. It's been ages, it's been years since I looked at it, but there was something in there about allowable use and things like that. And so I'd have to go pull it and see if I can even find what I recall. But
put together a history on that. There was some allowable use stuff. Then we did an amended development agreement with the property owner, which is Palmetto Bluff Developers. They've changed their name several times. I think that's what they are now. For example, we amended that so that we could add the middle and elementary school potentially in the future. And that limited that to 1,800 additional students from the 1,800 at the high school. So there's been a progression of those kind of agreements.
Okay. And have you ever, or are you aware of, I don't know about it in South Carolina, but anywhere else where a developer comes in and there's a large swath of land and I know that there's conversations right now and there seems to be a bit of a prioritization on affordable housing and requirements that are built into those agreements in that regard. But how would you navigate a school district wanting to be a part of that conversation to have perhaps a portion of that land donated for a future school site?
So those kind of conversations happen at the county or municipal level, whoever they are creating the development agreement with. We are not always at the table with those agreements.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure how we could make ourselves always be at the table. There's no
Yeah.
checklist that says, oh, did the school sign off on that?
Right.
Some,
wondering
some municipalities have suggested that, but I don't think has become practice for that to happen.
I'm wondering if there could be a conversation between perhaps the legislative committee and whatever mirroring committee that there is at the county level, where we discuss some type of county-wide, whether I don't know if it's an ordinance, I don't know what they would call it, but something where if there's a development agreement that's over a certain amount of acreage, that there's a requirement that the school district be brought to the table, or there is something where if there's a big, large development that's coming in, we have a seat at the table to have the conversation, to look at what the impact could be to the district, and also to potentially just voice what we would like to see in that space. I don't know the answer to that, though, and I don't know what the sentiment is of my other committee members or the board as a whole, but I certainly think it would be advantageous as we continue to see development, that we try to get our behinds in the seat.
I think that's a great conversation to have. Yes.
Dallas. Mr. Dallas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really want to applaud Dr. Wisniewski for approaching a conundrum with such an innovative thought process. To substantiate what I hear her pursuing and asking about 10 or 11 years ago, before Argent Boulevard really took off, I was invited to participate in a conversation with the developer. And I brought one of my theological friends, because he was always looking for how to help those who are less fortunate. And the developer, great person, went through about a 45-minute to an hour presentation, showed all the things that have now happened or are happening up in the line right across the Jasper Beaufort county line. And when he got through, I was absolutely elated. I'm thinking, wow, the economy is just going to grow by leaps and bounds. And it took a different approach. The theologian who had accompanied me to that presentation, he raised his hand and he said, wow, I see no provision for churches, synagogues, temples, playgrounds, hospital, any type of medical facilities. And every one of us who have just been imbued in the development side, I looked at him, I thought, well, I'll be doggone. It never hit my radar. So what Dr. Wisniewski is posing is something that, myself, it wouldn't have hit my radar, but now that she's brought it up, I think it is absolutely due for that type of conversation. I know on Hilton Head, I think she may have been alluding to Hilton Head and Bluffton and their efforts. There is real progress where there was none 3 years ago on creating affordable housing, because the people who we need to work in our businesses just cannot afford it. And so I think it's a matter of really having that energy around it, and then amazing things happen. So just wanted to say I'm really pleased by this conversation.
Anything else?
So do you want me to contact the person at Beaufort County in their planning, in their planning department, or who would be the contact person in meeting with this committee? Would you know the planner?
I would say probably start with Mark Davis, at the county. And then at municipality level, he would probably Heather Collin with the town of Bluffton. I mean, those are the two that cover the growing area of Bluffton, where we would have the bigger concern, I think.
So do you want me to contact them to see if they're available to come to a meeting with you all here?
Yeah.
But when you said about Davis, I was thinking more of Hillary because you wouldn't want that opportunity to come anywhere in Beaufort County. Because they always begin to develop and.
I'm sure he covers all of that. Yeah, Mark Davis is over planning and zoning. He's the deputy director at the county for planning and zoning.
Okay,
And that's who
Right.
the development agreements and all would fall under.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And who is the city of Beaufort?
And addition,
Contract out, their planning department, but I think they've hired somebody, and I hate to say it, I cannot think of their name right now.
They have a development going on in the Battery Creek area,
Yes.
200 and
yes.
some homes.
Right.
Rachel's in.
Okay, Rachel?
thank you, Mr. Chair. Just going to add that I appreciate Ms. Crutchfield coming and helping get the ball rolling on this. And also additionally, when we bring this forward to the full board, just in the committee report, I would like to ask our fellow board members if they can reach out to their counterparts on county council to kind of put a bug in their ear about us pursuing this, just to begin to try to drum up support and get the questions and answer period going. Thank you.
Gordon, have anything?
No, I'm listening and taking notes. Thank you.
Okay. Future topics. Yes, ma'am.
I have two.
Okay.
One is about the South Carolina Department of Education seeking to control over library and classroom books oversight. And the second one we touched on a little bit here today is the transparency and integrity in education. I'd like to get some more information about that.
And we would need Linda, right? Okay, all right. Rachel?
Sorry, I don't have any at this time.
Meeting?
Yeah, next meeting is when?
Lynn indicated she can't come to the work session.
Okay.
So if we are asking for her to come to our next legislative meeting, I can check with her schedule in November, or if you all want to go ahead and schedule something, and I can see if she's available on what you all have scheduled.
Okay. Find a date in November. And she will be.
Isn't that,
Huh?
wouldn't it be falling close to Thanksgiving? I mean, no, we meet the,
You're meeting the third, what's today?
it's October 17th.
So. The third, so normally this would have been a work, board meeting day, so we're not having a board meeting. So if you're going, maybe the third. You want to do the third Wednesday or the third Thursday in November, that's the 15th or the 16th, preferably the 15th.
No, that's not, I'm just making sure we did not, overlap with.
See if that would be available.
Okay, so I'll check and see if Lynn's available around the 15th,
Okay.
if that's okay with you all.
Fine.
Rachel, is that good?
I'm checking. Hang on one sec. 15th. Depending on the time, I am out of town that day, but I can zoom in depending on the time.
What time are you all at?
What time?
What time, do you need earlier or later?
I need later,
Later, like after 5?
or around 5 would be good. I'll still be in our time zone, so.
Okay,
5 o'clock.
so I'll check and see if Lynn's available on November 15th at 5.
Okay.
Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
And that also, okay. So have those two topics and then remember, Dr. Watts' hands up.
Dr. Quad.
You're muted. You're muted. Oh, there you go.
It wouldn't unmute. I just wanted to say what a great meeting, you guys. Excellent meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nothing. We adjourn.
Yes, adjourn.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.